Hello everyone and welcome to HTML for Noobs, Part 1 and Introduction. If you've come to watch this series, I do have one requirement for you. I will assume that you are interested in web development. But that is really it. I will not assume any previous programming experience. I will not assume you know anything about developing websites. I will assume that you just want to learn how to create websites, learn how web development works, and if that is you, you've come to the perfect place. This is the first video, so it's more of an introduction and we'll just get our feet wet in HTML and talk about what it is. And then over the course of the HTML series, you will go from being a complete novice to being able to make basic websites or web pages yourself from the bottom up. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so what is HTML? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. HTML is the part that defines the structure of our document. That said, HTML is not really programming. There's actually a lot of debate on this subject because some people claim that, well, HTML is a kind of programming, and then others say, well, it doesn't have all these different functions that defines programming, so we can't really categorize it as programming. And I do agree with that viewpoint. I do not think that HTML is programming per se. So when writing HTML, you can't really say that you're programming, but what you can say is that you are coding, and writing code is writing HTML because HTML is a code language. But that's just nitpicking on how to define HTML, but you do hear people mention it, so I thought I'd just swing it in there. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter. The important part is that you want to learn HTML, you just want to get started. So let's move on. HTML is the building blocks of our web page. When you are looking at a web page, Google, news sites, forums, whatever, if you type anything into a browser and go to some website, you will actually view HTML. HTML is the structure, so that's the thing that defines where text goes, where the header is, where's an image, everything like that. It's the groundworks. So HTML, writing HTML is the very first thing that we do when we make websites. HTML is easy to learn. It's not a complicated language, and it gives very fast results. If you're learning a programming language like Java or C#, the learning curve is higher, and it takes a while before you see some actual results. But in HTML, you will actually see your projects running in a browser from the get-go. And that's a very cool thing because you actually feel like you are making progress really, really fast. And you are, because HTML, the basics of it, well, they're very, very easy to learn. And as I said, HTML is used in all websites. There isn't a single website that doesn't use HTML. HTML is what the browser sees and renders. But that doesn't mean that HTML is simple. HTML5 is the newest version, and it brought up a lot of new tags. So even though the basic HTML is very simple, there's still a lot of room to become an expert in HTML. All HTML is written in something called tags. Now tags look like this green part here. You have an opening, then you have the name of the tag, the closing, then you have some value, and then you have the same tags, but then you have this slash which symbolizes the end. Now this is just to define where the start and end points are, because in HTML the text here has to be the same as the text over here, and what you put in between these opening and closing tags will be the value of this HTML. Now this will all make a lot more sense once we start actually writing HTML. So let's just dive headfirst and see some HTML. Now, what I have here is just a document. I am on a Mac, so this will be text edit that I will be using to write my HTML. You can write HTML in a simple text editor. You don't need some fancy piece of software. You don't need anything but a computer, a keyboard, and a text program. And then you're good to go. Now, if you are on a Mac, you have to do some settings before that you can actually view your documents. And just for completeness sake, you would go into settings, and unfortunately this is in Danish, but the layout should be the same. Then you should change the format here to regular text, and under the other tab you should check the box that says something about archiving HTML, and then you're actually good to go. So you open up a text editor, you have a blank page. So what do? If you want to write HTML, we have something called Boilerplate Code. It's a little unfortunate, but it's a necessity. This little fella here, that's the first tag. This is an opening tag. And what we will write here is exclamation mark, doc type, HTML, and then close it off again. We will then write a tag that says HTML, and then we will close the tag by writing HTML again. Now, this is the pattern that we will see a lot. This is actually a little special. What this does is that when the browser sees this, it knows, okay, well, this document is HTML, so I have to render it as HTML, so I don't show the code, I show what the code actually means. So this is just something we have to put at the top of our document as the very first thing in the document. We then make this starting tag, and you can tell them apart by this slash here. This is a starting tag. The tag is called HTML, and it ends where we also write HTML, but we can see this is the ending tag because of this slash. So I'll just give him some space. So everything we place between this and this will be the value of the HTML tag. The HTML tag is also a very special tag. It's mostly there for the browser's sake, because here we say, well, the document from here on out is HTML, and then we say everything between this and this should be rendered as HTML. So it functions like a clamor where we say whatever we write here is HTML. So we do it for the browser's sake. We then have to define a head. The head tag is another special tag, and we will leave it empty for now. It just has to be there. And most things that have a head also have a body. So we will also define a body. And now we are done. This is our HTML boilerplate code. And one of the hard things when you're starting out is having to remember this. So what I recommend doing is that you take this, you type it down, just type it down once or twice just so you get the hang of this opening tags and closing tags, and then you take it all, you copy it, and then you place it in a note or another document, and then whenever you have to write a new HTML document, you just paste it in like that. There's no need for you to type this every single time. I do recommend that you type it every once in a while, just so that you would eventually be able to type it on your own. But it is boilerplate code, so here in the beginning, just write it down once or twice, and then copy it in the next time, and don't worry too much about it. If we run this in the browser, we won't see anything. It'll just be a blank page, and just for the fun of it, we can do it. We'll call this tester.html, and we have to use the .html to say that this is an HTML document, so we don't get the raw text. So if we open this up, you can see here that this is just an empty page. Nothing is there yet. Even though we've written all this, we haven't really made any HTML. This is just boilerplates. So the browser knows it's an HTML document, but we haven't given it any HTML yet. And this is what we will do now. The body, well, that's the body of our document. It is where we will place all the information on the page to be rendered and displayed by the browser. Now, I've said rendered a lot, and for completeness sake, rendered is when the browser sees your text and then it transforms the text, it renders it into something different. It will take your tags and then it will render them into text or images. That's the process the browser does. And we will get into the details of the whole browser server client stuff later, but now we just want to write HTML. So the body is where the magic happens. So we can write HTML in the body and it will be displayed in the browser. We could just write text. It's actually a valid thing to do, but you should always place your HTML in tags. There is something called an H1 tag. So I open it and then I close it. H stands for heading. Simple enough. So we know this is a heading. The 1 is the size. H1 is the biggest heading we can make. We can also make H2, H3, and all the way down to H6. But we'll get into that in the next video. So, between the tags, the H1 tags, we can give a value. Here I've just written welcome to my first page, but you can write anything you want to. If I go ahead and save this and open up our page again, well, what do you know? We will actually have the heading displayed on the page. And there you also see the rendering, because we write all of this, but the browser only renders it as this. So we have now made our very first website. Well, it's very boring, I'll give you that, but it's a great starting point. I will go ahead and conclude the video here because there's a lot going on for a complete beginner, so don't feel ashamed if you feel overwhelmed. The first video is where you get a lot of starting information. But if you feel confused, just throw a comment, watch the video again, do whatever you have to do in order to feel comfortable and feel that you've learned the material in the video. Do the exercises that I will present shortly, and then move on to the next video. In the next video, we will make a lot more HTML code. All we have here is the heading, and it's a good starting point, but the main focus of this video is for you to understand that you need this boilerplate code. You need to understand that the browser only shows the HTML tags, it renders it. You need to understand what HTML is, how it is used, and this is how it is used in the very, very basic form. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the exercises. Each of these videos will feature an exercise list. Each video should feature 3 exercises: a bronze, silver, and a gold medal exercise. The bronze will be the simplest exercise and one that you should be able to solve as a minimum before moving on to the next video. The silver medal represents the entire video. So if you solve the silver medal, you should be able to have a firm grasp on the video. So whereas the bronze is the minimum requirements for moving on, The silver is the recommended requirements before moving on. They will ensure that you have grasped the video to the extent you need in order to understand the next part of the series. Obviously, I recommend doing both the bronze and the silver and not just moving on to the silver and conclude that you're there. And some exercises might even build upon a previous one, so always start from the bronze and work your way up. There's also a gold medal, and the gold medal is a medal that takes it one step further. It might even ask you to do things that wasn't showed in the video or that was vaguely hinted. So try a go at the gold medal, but if you can't figure it out, don't let that hold you back. The gold medal is just a sort of bonus exercise. So if you can do the gold medal, well then great, but it will often require you to do a bit of thinking and maybe doing some research on your own, whereas the bronze and the silver should be covered in the video. So if you're having trouble with those exercises, you can watch the video again and it should be more clear to you. Now, if you have any questions about the exercises, I will always be available in the comment section. Okay, so the first 3 exercises, well, the first bronze exercise, we have it here on the left, and it's a very simple exercise. Just write the HTML boilerplate code. That's the one we saw with the doc type and the HTML head and body tags. So just write that down in a text document and then save it for future use so you can copy and paste it. I also recommend that you save this as an HTML document and then run it in your browser. If you see a blank document, you know you're on the right track. The silver medal, in order to achieve that, you should write out a heading to the browser. You've already seen me do it in the video, so if you can't remember it, just go back and see how I did it. Enter whichever value you want into the heading, print it out, view it in the browser, and you are done. For the gold medal, you need to write out 3 headings, but they should each be in a different size. Now, if you remember, I told you that an H1 was a heading, where H stands for heading, and the 1 was the biggest heading. Try and work your way out from there and see if you can get 3 headings printed out in various sizes. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you the best of luck and I hope you'll be with me through this series. And I hope that you will learn HTML in a way that you are comfortable with. If you have any questions regarding the series, you have suggestions, comments, or you need some help with the exercises, hit me up in the comment section and I will get back to you. If you want to support me and the making of this series and my other endeavors, please consider throwing in a like, a comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel, or if you're feeling really generous, hit the donate button. There's a link in the video description below, and you press that, you go to my webpage where you can donate via PayPal. Every sort of support is greatly appreciated, and just being here, watching the video, is a great support to me. So thank you for being here, and I hope to see you next time.